If you ask me what's the worst thing that can happen in a coroner's office, would be for someone to exhibit that kind of behavior. That is just absolutely horrific.
You will not believe this true crime story. On August 19, 1982, 19-year-old Karen Range was murdered by an evil man. But not only was she murdered and essayed, she was victimized again after death by a second perpetrator. Yes, I said after death. And this second perpetrator would not be found out until 2008. So come join me in the murder she shed for this true crime case with a twist. My name is Holly. You should hit my subscribe button for more rarely heard true crime. Yes, you see it, that button, the one down there. Yep, right there. Hit it or be square. Yes, do that. Before we begin, I must give a warning. This case does involve necrophilia. So viewer discretion is advised. Also, I'm not sure I've ever done a story from Ohio. Today, if you're a subscriber from Ohio, I'm coming to you with this case. On August 19, 1982, the lifeless body of 19-year-old Karen Range was discovered by her mother in the bathroom of their residence in Cincinnati, Ohio. Karen's throat had been repeatedly slashed. Her face and head were severely bruised and battered, and her clothes ripped open to expose her top and bottom. A bruise was observed on the inside of Karen's upper thigh, consistent with the use of force. Quantities of semen were found both in and around her private area. At the time she was found, Karen's hair was still wet from a shower, indicating that the semen had been very recently deposited, since the shower would have rinsed it away. 3 separate bloody shoe prints were present on Karen's chest, one of which had been applied with sufficient force to cause a bruise. The cause of death was later determined to be that she bled to death from the slashes on her throat. Karen Sue Range was born on September 29, 1962 in Cincinnati, Ohio. Karen was an innocent girl who wanted to remain innocent until she was married to her husband, and now her virginity had been taken from her in the most brutal way. 22-year-old David STEFFEN's panic would get him convicted in this brutal assault and murder of this beautiful young girl. As a child, David had suffered from brutal physical abuse by his stepdad, eventually being sent to a Catholic school for troubled children. David ran away from the school several times. He hated it there. David's brother would say that David loved negative attention and would do everything in his power to seek it. David started committing petty crimes in 1972, such as shoplifting, trespassing, larceny, and then his crimes escalated until he was convicted of robbery in 1977 and sentenced to a max of 10 years, but ended up actually escaping prison in 1979. He was captured and then served 1 year in an Indiana state prison. David had gotten a job as a door-to-door salesman in 1992 and seemed to be trying to change his life around for the better. He was selling a household cleaning product called Hi-Pro, which was actually an all-purpose cleaning agent that could supposedly clean anything from driveways to windows. On August 19, 1982, he was trying to sell his product in a suburban area in Cincinnati. As he was walking, he noticed a cute young girl in her front yard and decided to approach her with his product. This young girl was Karen Range, who lived at home with her parents, but her parents were not home at the time. David showed Karen how well his cleaning product worked on her front porch and on the doorbell. He then asked Karen if he could come in the house and show her the different areas he could use the product inside of the house. Karen, who was young and naive, let him come in. Unknown to Karen, David had some sinister reasons for wanting in her house. First, he showed her how well the product worked on items in the living room. And then he told her it was ideal for cleaning the bathroom. They both entered the bathroom, where he squirted the product on the back of the toilet lid. As he raised back up, he grazed the side of Karen's top. This panicked Karen, and so he grabbed her, stuffed his cleaning rag in her mouth, and he began hitting her, eventually knocking her to the ground. He began to rip her clothes off and then hurried to the kitchen where he found a knife, returned, and cut her throat 3 times. He planned to assay her, but would later say he could not perform. This made him full of rage, so he began to repeatedly stomp on Karen's chest. He then grabbed his cleaning product and took off running out of the front door. He discarded his bloody shirt by some bushes, and it was never found, and he concealed the high-pro supplies, but they were later recovered. Realizing that his boss would expect an explanation for his absence, in his panic, David concocted a tale about being robbed. He called the police with this story and made out a police report even. After Karen's mom walked into the bathroom to the horrific scene, she called authorities. The next day, David was picked up and questioned and eventually confessed to the murder, but denied that SA had occurred. The authorities did not believe him, as the autopsy had clearly proved that she had been RAP'd. The autopsy had been performed by a coroner named Dr. Frank Cleveland, who worked for the Hamilton County Coroner's Office in Cincinnati. David was sentenced to death for the brutal RAPE and murder of Karen Range. Case closed, or so it was thought. David continued to complain that he had not essayed the victim and wanted a retrial. In 2007, DNA was advanced enough to finally test the semen found on Karen. So to prove David's guilt, they tested the semen, and to everyone's surprise, David had been telling the truth. The DNA did not match him. Authorities were stumped. Karen had never been with anyone, so how did the DNA not match to David? This was a twist they never expected, because now they needed to find who matched the DNA found in Karen. So there had only been one other place Karen's body had been after her death, and that was the coroner's office. This led authorities back to the Hamilton County's coroner's office, where everyone would be swabbed, but they found no matches. In March 2008, police officers arrested Kenneth Douglas on a drug charge. A detective ran his DNA sample through a database and came up with a match to the semen found in Karen Range's body. Then they would find out that Douglas was the coroner's ex-assistant, who happened to also be a mortician, and puzzle pieces finally fit together. They now realized that they were dealing with a necrophile. Douglas, who was now 60 years old, had worked the night shift at the Hamilton County Coroner's Office from 1976 to 1992. During that time period, morgue attendants were responsible for receiving the dead bodies and then inventorying their personal items. Morgue attendants also assisted in autopsies and releasing bodies to the funeral homes. Throughout his 15-year tenure at the morgue, Douglas had problems with tardiness and attendance. In a 1980 performance evaluation, the morgue director rated Douglas low for dependability and noted that Kenneth has had problems over the past year, which has affected his dependability and interest in his job. Douglas' continual tardiness caused him to be disciplined by being made to stay late or having his pay docked. Douglas was an alcoholic and also a crack addict. Douglas drank at work when he was alone on night shift and on weekends. Although Douglas was married and the father of 4 children, the morgue director knew Douglas had a reputation as a ladies' man and often took calls from women trying to reach him at the morgue. He told Douglas to tell these girls not to keep calling here. You talk to them after work. Around 1987, Douglas' wife called the morgue director and told him that her husband always smelled like alcohol when he came home from work. 6 months later, she called the morgue director again and informed him that her husband smelled like sex when he came home from work. The morgue director responded to her by saying, "Whatever happens on county time on county property is county business, and you are an insecure, jealous wife, and I don't want you to call here anymore."
So you called Bernie Kersker in '87.
Yep.
And tell me, as best you can recall, exactly what you told him.
I told Bernie, I said, Bernie, I think that Kenny's having some problems. And he said, what do you mean, Pat? And I said, Kenny's coming home, straight from work, and he's smelling like booze. I told him, I said, we're down to one car. More often than not, I'm dropping Kenny off and I'm picking him up. And I'm taking him home. He gets undressed and he reaches up.
Appling's attorney put it in terms that we can use on TV.
Her husband was also coming home from work, as she put it, smelling like sex.
When the 38-year-old left the morgue in 1992, it was not because officials fired him. He simply just stopped showing up for work. Douglas was not shy about admitting his necrophilic desires. Kenneth Douglas shocked his interrogators by confessing to having sex with more than 100 Hamilton County corpses during his tenure at the morgue.
I signed her in and bagged her hand and all that, and I believe she was dressed like that. Dave, I think, I'm not for sure if she was in a body pouch or was she wrapped up in a blanket. I really can't say, but I do remember going in the freezer, pulling in one of the rooms in the back.
Okay.
I would get on top of it, pull my pants down. If I wasn't drinking, I hadn't had anything to drink when I went to work, it wouldn't happen.
He blamed his deviant behavior on drugs and booze. He admitted taking Karen's unwashed body out of the freezer. And even though she was partially decapitated, he still violated her body. Karen, who had wanted to remain innocent for her husband, had now been abused by 2 disgusting men. Although he admitted to SAing more than 100 corpses, they only had proof, though, that he had assaulted 3 corpses. And they had proof through DNA on those 3 corpses. 19-year-old Karen Range was the first corpse he had assaulted. The other 2 victims died in 1991 and 1992. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison for the abuse of Karen's body in 2008. Douglas pleaded guilty in 2012 to having sex with 23-year-old Charlene Appling on the day she died after being strangled while 6 months pregnant, and having sex with another woman, April Hicks, who fell from a 3rd-story window in 1991 and died of blunt force trauma. He admitted to the desire to have relations with victims of brutal murders and deaths. Antoinette, Shirley Hicks's older sister, said, I imagine Kenneth Douglas pulling her out of a freezer, climbing on top of her just like he said, and having sex with her. This will creep up in my mind until the day I die. Douglas was sentenced for a further 3 years on each of the offenses. In 2014, the victim's family sued the county because the coroner's office had ignored pleas from Douglas' wife, and they claimed Douglas' superiors recklessly and wantonly failed to supervise the monster. The families of the 3 victims ended up with $800,000 split 3 ways. Not much considering the painful mental thoughts the families were put through. Douglas passed away in Cincinnati on September 13, 2016. David STEFFEN, after resentencing, his sentence was reduced from death to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the murder of Karen Range. He had it reduced because he was no longer responsible for the RAPE of Karen. I know, that was one heck of a twist. Yeah, and I hadn't even seen this case on YouTube. This is definitely a rarely heard crime case. I have seen where the mortician has little pieces on YouTube, but nothing, absolutely nothing about the victims of these monsters. So I wanted to make sure that the victims had a voice in this case. All right, guys, thank you for joining me at the Murder She Shed. And don't forget bloopers at the end. Although no Simon unless I film him tomorrow because he's actually already in bed for the night. Love y'all and appreciate you guys so much. Bye. Okay, I'd rather film in the daytime because of the lighting when the sun's shining. If I have wrinkles, I apologize. But it's easier to film at night because of my dogs, because they drive me crazy in the day, trying to want me to do stuff. Also, there's moths in here everywhere because I left the lights on. And then when I come back in here and open the door, moths just came flying in with all their glory. So if you see moths like flying around everywhere, Play like it's part of the show, like on Silence of the Lambs, you know, they had the moths. Just play it like it's kind of like that, okay? We'll just pretend it's true crime case. It's true crime case with a twist. True crime case, true crime case, true crime case. I don't know what I just said, but I'm probably going to start back over. You should hit my subscribe button for more. I'm not starting over again. And her clothes ripped open to expose her. Yep, and bottom. I'm trying to be nice so I don't get monetized. And also a CRACK. Oh, I just said it. Try not to say it and I say it. Although I've never wanted to be cremated, this case is making me second guess that thought. Now suddenly I'm thinking cremation is a very good idea. In fact, my husband, I think he should walk me to the crematorium, my body into the crematorium. How do you say that? Crematorium. He should walk my body to the crematorium and make sure they insert it in there. I don't want no creepy mortician or mortician assistants or anybody in there doing that kind of thing to me. I know I'm dead, but no, just no. No. I can't imagine how hard this was for the Dickens family, because I thought somebody had done that to my mama or something. Yeah, I'm coming after you. You're not just gonna get sued, buddy. I'm gonna kill you and then have something done to you by somebody. Yeah, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but it pissed me off. That's what I'm trying to say. And my skin looks super white in this light. Look like a pale ghost. Well, I guess that's fitting since I'm telling a scary story that I should be a ghost. But I promise I'm not dead yet. And if I die, remember, I want to be cremated. Oh, by the way, I have Cheetos in here. What I'm trying to say is I have Cheetos. I don't have Dr. Pepper because it's late, but I like the fact that I have no dogs. Oh my God, the best taste ever. If you don't like Cheetos, you're weird. I have no dogs begging me out of Cheetos because they're all in bed and they're in the house. And this is nice. Really smacking all over the microphone. I'm sorry about that. Some of you people probably have like, what is that when people hate to hear other people smack their food? It is kind of annoying. I mean, I don't know. The only thing I hate to hear smack is ice. That one bothers me, really. I shouldn't eat at night. I've gained too much weight. I need to quit doing this. I love to eat. I love to eat way too much. I'm supposed to have my oldest son over with his wife tomorrow, so. And if Grandma's watching, hey, Grandma. Their grandma lives with them. My son's an RN, and his wife is going to be an RN. She went to school. She hasn't got her license yet. But Grandma lives with them, and they take care of Grandma. That's the sweetest thing ever. I think that's so sweet. And so since they're both pretty much nurses, Grandma's got the best of care, and they're doing wonderful. I'm proud of them. Like I said, hi Grandma. If you're still watching this video, she loves Murder She Shed, and she watches me quite often, and Grandma's a sweetie. All right, love y'all. Bye.